Welcome to our latest session of LocalGov Drupal Week 2025. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Tim, the comms lead at LocalGov Drupal. This session is entitled LGR, Why Councils Are Choosing LGD and Netcall. And I'm joined by a host of people, brilliant people on the panel. We've got Will Callaghan, product lead at LocalGov Drupal, Mark Gannon, Director of Client Solutions at Netcall, Kate Hurr, Assistant Director of Digital Innovation and ICT at Cumberland Council, and hopefully Chris Wales, Director of Digital Innovation at Brighton and Hove City Council. Chris, we're hoping you're there. And if
Definitely
you're not...
am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent, Chris. Thank you. In the nick of time. We'd like to take this opportunity to thank our event sponsors, Anatech, who hold the current development contract, Agile Collective, our previous dev team through the alpha and beta phases, and who hold our support and hosting contract, and Big Blue Door, who currently sponsor Mark Conroy to work on the platform. Thanks to them. Thanks also to all our council and supplier subscribers and supporting partners, including Mark of Netcall as well, who contribute so much to the project. A little bit of Zoom help before we start. You can decide on how to view the meeting in the top right of the Zoom screen by clicking view, believe it or not. Please add any questions into the chat. So we'll take some questions at the end, but if you start to add them now, we'll compile them as we go. And maybe Aaron, you could help with that a little bit if that's okay. We'll be recording the session, so please mute your audio and turn off your cameras. Thanks very much. Turn them back on when we get to questions at the end. And we're going to be using Mentimeter, and Aaron's going to be doing that for us a little bit in a minute. So get ready. It's going to be interactive. And that is the spiel over with. So welcome again, everybody. Thanks very much for coming. So there's going to be 4 people speaking, and we're going to be doing a bit of Mentimeter work as well, which will be great. And I'm gonna kick us off. So, Aaron, would you like to bring up the first Mentimeter question, please? Can you do that? Oh, you've gone quiet, Aaron. That's terrifying. Where have you gone? Because I don't have access to Mentimeter.
Sorry, it asked me to log in again, which I didn't realize I was doing it right at the beginning. Apologies.
Oh, sorry. I thought you'd gone to make a cup of tea. Oh.
Stop sharing. That might be the
Stop sharing. Oh dear.
Thing for people. Is that right?
Okay. I've stopped sharing, Aaron.
Okay, great. Thank you. And so what I'll do is just open the Mentimeter and then
it's just the first question for now, please, Aaron, just so we can get an idea of people from people who are here. So we've got for some reason there's no question title there. Not sure why that is. Just wondering where people are on their LGR journey. Have you been through LGR? Are you currently going through the process? Please answer now. For those who don't know, you should have a little icon in the sort of right of your screen. That's where you can get onto Mentimeter and then answer the question.
It kind of needs I'm not a council, doesn't it? Or we just
Yeah,
discount that.
but
Or just don't answer it if you're
not
a
too worried. I'm not too worried if you're not from a council. For the purpose of this particular Mentimeter. Oh, and the title's now appeared. I don't know why there was no title before.
Very mysterious.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you for that, Aaron. I think that's everybody answered. So quite a few going through the process. Quite a lot already been through the process, which is interesting. And a few who have Okay,
Doesn't
great.
affect the majority of people on this call, I'd say.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Okay, thanks, Aaron. I'm going to start sharing again now and hope this works. Here we go. So, we've been looking at our strategic objectives and what we want to achieve over the next few years as an organisation, and one of those things is to be the first choice CMS for reorganising councils. So how do we want to go about doing this? Well, the first big thing for us is by listening to our users. And we're using a variety of different forums to sort of gather ideas and user feedback to see what councils want. We're running connect events around the country to get input from councils going through LGR, and thanks to Brighton and Chris, who hosted us recently. We'll be heading to Woking quite soon for another one, and all councils are welcome to come along, so please do sign up. I'll put a link in the chat in a minute. And we're also going to be running product group sessions and various other meetups in the future. What I would urge councils to do is come along and get involved and help shape all the work that we do. You know, we know there's lots going on, lots of different events going on around LGR, and we don't want to be draining on people's time and resources. But what we do and how much we do really depends on demand from users, from you guys. So ultimately, we're here for you. So let us know what you need, and we'll try and deliver it. And that brings me very neatly onto our next slide and to Will, who's going to talk more about how we deliver the work and what we're
Yeah,
thinking.
sure. Can you hear me all right?
I can.
Fantastic. So if you're in the mission session on Monday, you can maybe go and make a cup of tea because I'm going to be repeating what we talked about in that session. But for those that haven't, I'll just sort of set out how local Gov Drupal organises the work at a high level and what we're thinking of doing about LGR. So we do missions basically. I think missions is a fashionable word. They last sort of anything between 3 and 12 months. We plan for the year ahead, so 2026 in this case, at about now, about this time of year. So during local Gov Drupal week is a good time. We did this time last year. I came along with a series of proposals, basically generated from conversations like this one in meetings in our Slack, which you're very welcome to join if you're not part of, in our Connect events and whatever, you know, whatever sessions we run. People come and say, well, how about this? Why aren't you covering this? And obviously LGR is a massive part of many councils' lives over the next few years. So it really had to be on this list. I'll just go through the other ones briefly, though, just so you're not staring at words that make no sense. So last year we did something called Refresh, which is like looking at old sort of technical features that local Gov Drupal has. It was kind of necessary. We've done that now. Accessibility, it's pretty obvious. We did a big push on it last year. This year just gone. We're going to continue that, but it's going to be more like BAU work. Microsites is a little a kind of satellite product that we have that allows you to do lots of little sites alongside your main site. AI for content designers is thinking about the content design tools that you might need to keep quality up in your work, to sort of deal with requests from other parts of the council. Maybe you're not particularly happy with that kind of thing. The couple of proposals I'm going to talk about in a bit more detail are search and LGR itself. So maybe Tim, if you can click on, I'll go through those. So right now, these are still proposals. We're putting these out in our community and saying, this is what next year feels like. What do you think? So we very much, this is a live conversation. If you're thinking, yeah, this is great, brilliant. If you think we should be doing something else, that's absolutely fine. Just let us know. So there's a big chunk of search that helps with LGR. So, and having been through LGR in a council a while back, what I very much noticed was that yes, okay, you create new shiny sites, but actually you've got sort of a kind of undercurrent of old broken sites as well that you're trying to signpost users to the right content. So search has got a big part to play in that. So we're thinking, okay, well, how do you search the whole estate, not just your new stuff, all of your stuff? And how does AI help with that? You know, is there some kind of AI sort of trickery or technique that we can use to signpost users to the right place? So we think this is going to be a big part of what we do next year. So if you're interested in that, even if you're not going through LGR, you might want to do search better. Please do let us know if you're interested in this, and if you want to take part, then please do. The other thing, Tim, if you go to the next slide, is LGR proper. You know, how do we help you prepare for this? Because it's an upheaval. So one thing that Tim mentioned, we're going to be talking with councils who are going through this. So, for example, all the Surrey councils already sort of dropped a few of you a line. And as Tim said, we've got an event in Woking. Like, where are you with this? Know it now. How can we best help you with the work ahead? But we are thinking about specific jobs. Search I've already mentioned. The second area of work we're looking at is how do you show users content that's only related to them, to their area? So, for example, can you get a postcode lookup like one time, and then that influences the content that users see from there on? It's actually quite straightforward to do. So, and one of the councils has actually done a prototype of this already. So, is that a solution that a lot of people can use? We're thinking about how to brand up the sites that you have. So not only your new shiny sites, but all the old ones. How do you do a better job of that? Particularly if you have old LocalGov Drupal sites, how do you do a better job of that? We're also thinking about migration from other CMSs. You might choose to go somewhere else, and that's sad for us, but you know, how do we help you do that? You might choose to come to us, in which case, how do we better prepare LocalGov Drupal to accept your content from another CMS? So that's kind of where our head's at right now. There are other ideas too, but tell us what you need. Yeah, and tell us how we can help you. So there's a lot to this, and you'll have a hard enough time. You know, I've been through it, and our next couple of speakers have been through it too. So we know this is going to be tricky. So tell us how we can help you. I think we've got another Menti coming up.
We have. That's a great segue, Will. So,
It's all right.
Erin, are you there? I'm going to stop sharing again. Hopefully, you've not gone for a cup of tea, and you can put up the next Menti questions for me, please.
You know,
And hopefully, the question will be there, and I don't have to remember what exactly it is.
let's see. Yeah, it's very odd before. There we go.
Here we go. On a scale of 1 to 10, how useful would you find these features? So this is the things that Will has just talked about. So how useful do you think you would find them on a scale of 1 to 10? Particularly, obviously, for the councils that think they are going through it or about to go through it or are in the process of going through it. We've got 4 options there. Show citizen content only related to their new council area, share theme or style guide across multiple sites, easy migration for other CMS products, and multi-site search. Search is in the lead. I love this little like race to which is getting the most.
And if there's something here that I don't know whether you're going to do a question on this, Aaron, if we're not doing that, if there's something here that we haven't covered and you really think we should look at, are we doing a question on that, Aaron, or not?
It's the next
All right.
question, Will.
Ignore me. I couldn't remember what the questions were.
That's all right.
It's interesting because search came when we did sort of something similar in the mission session on Monday. Search was top of the list, so it is again, which is really interesting to see.
And it's not all the same people because I had a look earlier. So we're all right. There's some double counting, but not too much.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, people are still voting. Let's give it another second.
So if you're feeling brave and you're using other CMS products, please do say in the chat what you'd want to migrate from.
Yeah.
Or if you don't want to post that, then message us maybe if you want us to look at something in particular. Some of our suppliers have looked at all the other major CMSs and have thought about how to do migrations. I think they've actually done some. So it's not as if we're doing, it's not a clean sheet of paper. This work has already been done. So let us know if there's particular work you'd like us to look at.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thanks for that, everybody. Oh, Craig's made a comment. Can someone read? Show citizen content only related. Sorry, here we go. Only relates to enabled content that hasn't been harmonized.
Yeah.
Due to policy or contract. Thank you, Craig, for your comment.
Yeah.
Shall we go to the next slide?
Yeah.
I mean the next Menti, sorry.
All right.
So this could be any features that you might want, but more generally, what digital challenges are you facing or think you're likely to face? Maybe that we haven't mentioned already. Oh, Jamie's mentioned WordPress in terms of migration as well. Thank you, Jamie.
Is it a free text question?
Yeah, it's free text. Type away, guys. We've got our first one, in-house resources. Yeah. A challenge at the best of times, even without LGR.
I'm wondering about sort of, you know, culture, sort of people in some other organisations wanting to take over, or, you know, is this viewed as a competition? You've got different organisations competing almost, which ideally there shouldn't be, but yeah, lots of AI. I want the shiny. I'm not thinking about the actual issues at hand. Yeah, and how to use AI effectively, and that's another mission for next year that we're looking at.
Yeah. Someone said smaller budget. I guess, is that a smaller budget per citizen? You should imagine slightly bigger budget if councils are merging. But maybe we can unpack that at the end because I'm aware of time. Thanks everyone for your thoughts there. It's more for us to digest. Oh, thank you for scrolling through them. I appreciate that. That's great. Okay. Let's move on. Just a very quick final question from us before we hand over to Kate. Bearing in mind what we said at the beginning about there being a sort of a lot of noise and a lot of activities in this space, just a really quick question: would you benefit from a space, you know, provided by us to share ideas, challenges, and frustrations related to LGR? We won't dwell on this question, but it's useful for us to know if it's worth us providing more than you're already getting elsewhere. That's great.
That looks like a yes.
Yeah, that's definitely a yes, isn't it? Thanks very much for voting, guys. We wouldn't have been sad if you'd have said not sure or no. But anyway, um thanks very much. Okay, so Aaron, could you hand back the slide deck to me, please? Thanks everyone for participating in that. I am now going to share my screen again and hand over, if it works, to Kate. It does work, thankfully. Kate,
Great,
over
thanks,
to you.
Tim. Thank you. So anyone that's heard me talk about LGR in the past knows that I can talk about this at length. So I'm going to try and keep this as brief as possible. But if there's any questions or anyone wants to speak to me about anything that I say separately, please do give me a shout. Next slide, please, Tim. So just a bit of a context around LGR in Cumbria. So Cumberland's been a new council since April 2023. And in Cumbria, we used to have 7 authorities, 1 county and 6 districts. Our unitary process led to the development of 2 new unitary authorities, Westmoreland and Cumberland, each of which took 3 of the districts, and then we have been splitting the county council. In recognition that that was a massive programme of work and that we couldn't do all of that for day one, there was an agreement that a number of those ex-county council services would be hosted by one or other of the authorities for day one. So from our area, the digital team were hosted by Westmoreland day one, and they disaggregated over to Cumberland in April 24. And the ICT service, the ex-county council, has remained as the ex-county council ICT service and provides services on that same footprint. And I am the AD for that service, and I'm also the AD responsible for splitting that service. So I still provide ICT services to Westmoreland and to the Cumbria Fire and Rescue Service. So it's quite a complex scenario in Cumbria. So we are doing both aggregation and disaggregation of services. Next slide, please. Getting to day one. Now, I feel like I've been a little bit of the LGR rain cloud, walking around talking to people about this and kind of dampening everybody's massive ambitions to do loads of transformation and take this once in a lifetime opportunity to transform service delivery, which we keep being told about. That's not what I'm saying. There's clearly opportunity to do that. I think it's, for me, one of the biggest lessons out of this is how you balance that. And we're all here to deliver change, aren't we? You know, that's why we're in our jobs. We want things to be better, particularly in this kind of area. It's just really difficult to manage all of that at the same time. And I think that's one of the biggest lessons. So don't lose that ambition and don't lose that consideration of opportunity, but be pragmatic and realistic about what you can deliver for day one and what then comes next. Some of the words that we kind of got sick of hearing: how do you get to day one safe and legal? And this sounds like such an obvious thing, but it's worth saying. Once you've got a vesting day, that it's not like any other change program. That can't change, that can't slip. You can't just decide that you're not going to be able to hit vesting day. You're hitting vesting day, and that's that. And you have to manage your expectations around what you can therefore deliver for day one. So what is essential for day one, and what then you're going to pick up day two onwards, and that needs quite a lot of careful consideration. And sometimes it's the boring stuff you've got to get right, isn't it? You know, how are people going to get into buildings? How are people going to be able to print? What's their user access? What Microsoft tenancies have you got in place? And particularly when you are doing a split of a council, how is all of that going to work? People are on different kits. People have got different ways of doing things. What day one can you get in place to support that new organisation? And the slides there are a couple of the programs that we had. So we had a number of work streams in place. There was a massive, as you can imagine, program plan that everyone was working to. And we just had to adjust our expectations in terms of what could be delivered. You need to pay staff and you need to be able to support service day one. Now, for us, that measure of success was that we got to day one vesting day with no blip in service. It was, service was continued from an ICT perspective. There was no downtime. Users coming in didn't experience anything different. And there's a huge amount of work to get to that point. So that became our measure of success. And some of the stuff around transformation we recognised would have to wait for later. And you also, when you're doing some of this, if you're getting into that arena that is having shadow authority set up, where there aren't people necessary to make decisions yet, there people are looking at how you're going to get into post, who's going to be your head of paid service, who are your new members, who makes some of these decisions. That can also cause some delays in getting stuff done. So you kind of got to prepare for that as well. Next slide, please, Tim. One of the big things that was a massive success for us was that from a customer experience perspective, people got a sense of there being a new council. So we had, if you can remember that we're splitting the county council, so we had one county council website that we had to then make work for both Westmoreland and Cumberland. And we were fortunate, obviously, long-time users of LocalGov Drupal, long-time supporters of LocalGov Drupal, we were using Drupal as our website content platform. So on day one, we'd managed to create 2 new unitary authorities in 3 months, and there was a huge amount of sharing between those sites. And I think Will's touched on some of the challenges that we had around how do you display multiple content across legacy websites when that content hasn't been harmonised. So how do I, as somebody that needs their bin collected in Allerdale, when those bin collections haven't changed because we haven't harmonised our waste collection service yet, how do I get to the right content for me, but still feel that I'm part of the new Cumberland website? So there's a huge amount of work behind the scenes underneath the skin of the website to get people to the right place on both of those, for both sites. So that wasn't just for Cumberland, that was for Westmoreland as well. And Craig and the team, I know Craig's on the call, and if there's any detailed website questions or I get any of this wrong, I'm sure he'll shout up. From a website perspective, we are still doing the harmonisation of websites. So we have switched off our Carlisle website, Craig, I think that's right, and we're still working to switch off our old legacy Copeland and Allerdale site so that we still have that multiple website problem that we're still dealing with every day. But that front door, from a customer perspective, the theming was similar and we could get people to where they needed to be. Next slide, please. And so that was enabled by this community, and it was enabled by people on this call who were very supportive in terms of how we could do this work. So we used some of the reusable components. microsites in particular has been a massive success for us. The elections, the council lookup. Also, we've done our intranet using LocalGov Drupal, so we're busy trying to work through issues around that. And again, the community have been massively supportive in terms of how we've been able to deliver that. So LocalGov Drupal in and of itself really enabled the delivery of website for day one. So just a massive thank you to the whole community for us being able to do that, really. Next slide, please. But day 2 onwards is complicated. And I put a comment around when you asked who's done LGR. I think there is a perception that Cumberland, being an authority that was formed in 2023, has done LGR, and in lots of ways we have, but from a technology perspective we haven't. I'm still running multiple services and multiple teams. I've still got to aggregate all my data centres. I've still got to aggregate my networks. I've still got 58 line of business applications within the ex-county service that need to be split into the new authorities. We've done a huge amount of work over the last 2 years to do that work, and we've split some of our really key line of business applications like adult social care, children's social care and education management, and they're massive programmes of work from a data migration perspective. And it's not easy to say just how much work has gone into all of that, and to all intents and purposes from a user perspective it's just stayed the same, with a huge amount of work behind the scenes to get us to that point. So we still have quite a lot of work to do on that, and one of our biggest challenges is how you balance the need to do things like tenancy migration, the need to do things like data centres and networks and splitting of applications, alongside supporting the council to do its new work. And I think we've just commented that with the Menti question about the challenges. How do you balance that expectation? How do you do AI? How do you do more transformation work when you're coming from such a complex background and you've still got teams that you've got to bring together, and different ways of working and different cultures and different skill sets? How do you sort of manage that process? And we're still working through that, and that's going to take some time to do. Disaggregating the ex-county council ICT service, we're just starting really now, and that's going to be again a massive programme of work to get people where they need to be, but also get the associated systems and things done. So it's not, I'm really not labouring the point by saying it's hard work. It is really hard work, and we've got to be mindful about just how much work that involves. Next slide, please. So it can be really challenging space, and sometimes it's you do feel a bit overwhelmed by it. But there are loads of really positive opportunities through this process too. I think one of the things I would say, it's really easy to focus on your differences. It's really easy to focus on the things that you don't do the same, but try and find some common ground. Try and find the things that you do the same. From a customer perspective, that really helped the work stream. We're all there to serve customers better. So once we kind of got into that understanding, it was easier to find solutions to problems. Use all these communities of practice that exist. We didn't have the same level of support going through LGR because there wasn't as many people that had been through it, and there wasn't as much focus on it. There wasn't as many people going through it, so there weren't some of the communities of practice really use those because they're a massive source of support. Cultural differences are significant. They are, and don't underestimate the impact of those. People working in different ways. I've spoken to a member of one of my team the other day who said from a district perspective they were smaller, they were jack of all trades and master of lots. Say they had multiple skill base, whereas in the county council it was a bigger service and there were more functional teams. So how do you balance that? How do you get people working together when they kind of got different skill sets? Treat staff with compassion, and by treating staff with compassion I also mean be honest with people about the challenges that they're facing and empower them to solve problems. It's quite a process of leaving an old organisation behind. People, particularly in our case, had worked at their respective authorities for a long time and their identity was with those authorities. When you move to something new, there's quite an impact on individuals going through that. You will probably know this on the call, but don't underestimate the scale and the complexity of technology and data. It's a significant programme and it needs to be invested in, both from a capacity and from a financial perspective, to get you to where you need to be, which is where I come to understand your contracts, really get under the skin of it. You can't do too much work to understand your contracts. And I think, as I've already said, focus on the basics. What does your user experience look like day one? There was, it causes quite a lot of noise if people don't have the same access that they used to have, or they feel that they can't see each other's calendars and things like that. That causes noise. So just be honest about that and focus on what you can deliver. And get your technology teams involved as early as possible to have these conversations. If technology underpins everything that a council does, they have to, technology has to be up there in terms of what people are deciding and making decisions about, and that really impacts into your day 2 program of work onwards. Have some really clear priorities about what you're going to deliver and what you can't deliver, because you've got this other raft of work to do to consolidate legacy tech. So it's a challenge, but it does come with some opportunity, but you've just got to be really, really pragmatic and realistic. And that's me.
Thanks, Kate. That was absolutely brilliant. Very interesting. I'm not sure if there's any comments or questions because I can't see my chat, but we'll come back to those at the end. Thanks very much, Kate. Next, I'm going to hand over to Chris. Chris, are you with us?
Indeed, Tim. I've also pressed the magic button that says, "Can I request control so I don't have to turn you into my Chris Whitty assistant?" Are you? Has that come through?
Let's do it. Let's see if it works.
All right. Okay. So, good afternoon, everybody. So I'm going to talk about the West Northamptonshire experience, which is surprisingly similar to the Cumberland experience. See if it works. It's also surprisingly similar to the Jimi Hendrix experience. It's not as cool, but it is a fair bit trippier, as you will see as we go. So we're going to talk about some similar things, but just from a slightly different perspective. And before I go any further, I'm going to talk about, well, what is it? What even is LGR? I think it's just an important thing because we've all got different views on this. And I have one, is that it's one of these, which if you were to dust it down and look at your old Prince2 manual, if you ever went through it, is a temporary organisation created to deliver one or more business products. So we've all seen this in the manual, haven't we? It's a project, folks. It's something that you do as a one-off. It's not business as usual. And it has all these various things that make it a project. It delivers change. It's going to be cross-functional by necessity. It thankfully will end, though some of us who've been through it would tell you otherwise. It's fairly unique and it involves a lot of uncertainty. So LGR is textbook definition a project. Why is that important? Well, it's important because there's this concept in project management, which I love to refer to, called the iron triangle. And it says, if you imagine a triangle that has 3 points, time, cost, and scope quality, imagine the little yellow dot is your project. It has to live somewhere within this triangle. You can have something that is at one of these corners, infinitely quick, infinitely cheap, or infinitely complete, but it can't exist at all 3 of them at the same point in time. And every single project that's ever done has got to live somewhere on here. Now, ideally, a project manager would love to be able to move all 3 of these dials, but in practice, project managers kind of expect to be able to move 2 if they're happy. In other words, you absolutely need this product, but you'll give me more money if I need it, or more time if I need it, because the deadline is the product itself is important, or the deadline's essential, in which case I'd like some more money, or I'd like to change the scope in order to meet it. That would be a happy space. If by definition only one of these things can move, it's going to have to be super elastic. If you need something to a certain time and a certain price, you're going to have to be very flexible on the quality. And if you need something to a certain price, you might have to be very flexible on the time. That is the nature of that. And if none of them move, then terrifyingly, it's not a project, it's a panic. How does this relate to LGR? Well, this is what's going to happen. As Kate already pointed out, your time is going to be a statutory deadline. It is not going to move. And for those of you who've been watching local government budgets any time in recent history, you are probably well aware the budget is not going to move. So you can guess what's going to happen. The only dial that's going to move in a project that and all projects have to have moving dials because they're all responding to uncertainty, is scope or quality, which means a couple of obvious things. Number one, you're going to have to put a hell of a lot of temporary fixes in place. That's probably going to mean your shiny new unitary Drupal site dropping out to horrible old sites in West Northamptonshire. That was in excess of 2 years that we had to divert people to old websites because it's simply, as time burned down and cost was fixed, something was going to have to drop. And it was that wonderful idea of having it all in on day one. And it means, sorry, Kate, to parrot that horrible phrase, the scope will have to be stripped back. As the shadow authorities look at it, they will realise they've got to sell something that is, quote unquote, safe and legal, which means they will start chucking as much out of the program as they can and as much over the wall for the new unitary to worry about post vesting day. What that means is you're going to have a tremendous hangover of work post vesting day that will go on for years. And Kate referenced some of that in terms of merging and aggregating systems. A bunch of stuff that's going to have to happen in addition to the normal work of a council, i.e. running all your services, regular upgrades and patches, and general transformation. There will be probably several years of additional work to be done to slowly coalesce your fragmentary councils under the hood. So I'm telling you all this in advance because I'm going to talk tactics in a second, how you might want to head some of this off at the pass. One more thing I'll talk about as well before we get to, I think, key learnings I'd love to share with you is just something to be aware of. There is a model within sort of organizational development called the stages of team formation. You may have heard of this. It says that for any brand new team coming together, there are 4 key phases that they go through: forming, storming, norming, and performing. In other words, coming together, hey, this is great, isn't it? As you can see, performance is average there. Then the inevitable fights over, well, who's doing this? Well, I don't like that. Well, this was all great until so-and-so came along. That's kind of your least performance stage, the storming. Hopefully then finding a new normal, norming, and eventually right at the end getting to performing. I just want you to hold this model in your mind because it's going to apply on 2 levels. If you're going through LGR, you're probably going to have to create a brand new, in many cases, technology or digital function. You want an eye on this and you want to be prepared for the fact that you will need to go through these 4 phases as a new technical team. What you cannot do is take the culture of one of the councils and transplant it onto the incoming members of the team that are coming from other authorities. You will need to reform, and the sooner you can meet your counterparts and other authorities and work out how you like to work and how you do things, the better, because you have some time ahead of formation. You're probably going to have to go through some butting of heads when that happens, and you're going to have to find your new normal before you as a technical team can perform. So the first piece of advice I'm going to give to you is, if you are already going through this process, start building relationships now with your counterparts in other authorities. You can do a lot of this before the fact, and you want to be as close to performing as you can as you get towards the wet end of unitary and over that, because as I said, there will be a large hangover of work that's being thrown over the wall as it becomes clear that scope was the only one of those 3 points on the triangle that could move to make it happen. So, in a small nutshell, what would I tell you? I think there's 3 areas. Process. So, number 1, obviously, bear in mind that whatever this looks like for you, if you are looking at merging websites, if you are looking at underlying payment systems and what's in scope, again, the authority in question will determine. Make sure, of course, that you start bartering now for as much flexibility in costs, resources, and time as you can. The further you go down this process, the more panic there will be, the more resources will be diverted to things that keep chief execs up at night, things like line of business systems, adults and social, sort of adult child social care, that sort of thing. So be bargaining and banking as much as you can now. Expectations. Be clear that your brand new function on the other side is going to be spending probably 2 to 5 years finishing the job. That is, when you have stuck together 4 or 5 councils with sticky back plastic and string and slapped a nice logo on the top, a nice new logo, you're still going to have to spend a few years knitting together those several ships into one big ship. It will take time. You want to be factoring that into your future thinking. And it may affect your choices around how quickly, for example, you think you can knit together a site or produce new tech. One thing I would also say as well, one to bear in mind in your teams and in others, skin in the game. Those who deliver should inherit. Do not be in a position where whoever's making technical choices or doing work pre-unitary is not going to be the person inheriting the problem post-unitary, because the incentive to go, I'm going to make this really hard problem go away by leaving it for the next person to deal with, will increase the size of your post-unitary hangover. So that's process. A few technical things. I would, if I could do anything in the unitary process that we went through, again, get your architecture sorted early. Have a battle plan. Have a roadmap that you can sell to your shadow authority. Again, attention will wane. Focus will tighten on delivery as you get towards the end, and the temptation to bounce you into maintaining old tech because it's just too late to replace it will be high. The quicker you can get a roadmap in and get it sold to your incoming senior leadership team, the fewer mistakes and pain you will have. We should all know this, but in general, this is a fantastic time to think about transformation. Let's not encode crappy old processes into our sites. Let's ask that key question: if we could design this whole thing from scratch using today's technology tools and know-how, what would it look like? This is absolutely the time to keep hitting that question, because again, as time narrows, the temptation to roll over bad tech just to give the new authority something to work with will increase. And again, it's a chance for fresh thinking. We do not want a situation where you have a vendor, you don't really like them, you're not happy with the system, whether that is a payment system your Drupal site has to integrate with or whatever. Don't lock it in for another 3 to 5 years. Plan now how you will not be in a position where you're being bounced into a renewal just prior to vesting. And finally, some individual advice for people. Number one, this is a fabulous time to upskill. Your new authorities need enthusiastic people coming forward, whether as individuals or as a team. This is a perfect time to make yourself invaluable and to gain skills. And I saw several instances of employees who went, there's nobody else doing this particular brand of technology. I want to be that person in the new unitary authority. I'm going to put my name forward and I'm going to make myself that person. So it is a fantastic time to step forward and be counted. Culture, just be aware, kind of touched on this in the team formation. You need to get people together early. You need to share your ideas. You need to create new rituals. You will get pushback if one council's ways are pushed on the others. So how do you as a group get together and design, co-design together the culture that you want to have to make sure it delivers? Signs, symbols, and words matter. As soon as you can, stop saying I'm the ex-member for this council or I was from this council. Start talking about your new team. The quicker you have that shared language, the easier you're going to find it to perform. And finally, back to, I've crossed out one. Back to one more, team formation. Back to that model. Please make sure you know when you're on that curve. Keep looking back at it. You're going to have some hard times. It is normal. Reflect on that together. Make sure you are journeying to that performance point. And that is me, I think, unless there are any other questions.
Thanks for that, Chris. We're going to go to questions in a minute. It should give a time warning and apology. We've already gone slightly over, so apologies for that. But now, next up, Mark from Netcall is gonna do his bit. Mark,
Okay.
are you still there?
I am. Thanks, Tim. I'll be rapid, given the time. My job is to really talk about LocalGov, Drupal, and Netcall as the perfect partnership for LGR. So I've got 4 kind of key areas I'm going to quickly touch on. I mean, as you've heard, there's no easy answers or silver bullets. So I'm not at all going to suggest that Netcall and LocalGov Drupal can provide either of those things. However, I think the combination of our platforms and how we as organizations do things can significantly help councils go through LGR. So I'd say in terms of the complementary strengths combined, I think we do together bring a powerful alliance for how local government reorganisation can happen. So, we've got 2 different platforms, but when you put those 2 things together, I think it adds greater strength than those things individually. Obviously, LocalGov Drupal's open source content management system designed for local government websites. It's got flexibility, scalability, etc. And the Netcall platform is low code, enables rapid automation of complex workflows and processes. So you put those 2 things together, and that synergy allows councils to really accelerate their digital transformation initiatives. And you've heard from our speakers so far, there's a lot of work to be done. So streamlining, simplifying, consolidating, and lots of other words ending in ing is going to be really important through LocalGov reorganisation. And I think one of the biggest strengths, I think, of our partnership, of how we both work with our customers, our councils, is around collaboration. I think both within what LocalGov Drupal does, but what we do with our customers, very collaborative. And I think that's going to be really, really essential. In terms of how suppliers work with organizations going through reorganization, it's going to be fundamental that collaborative approach is there. And I think bringing that is a benefit. I think we bring that other suppliers just don't. And you know, if people want to put in the chat who they think those other suppliers are, as per Will's earlier conversation, then feel free. We've done some specific integration work with councils. So we have a working group that Will and I work with a number of councils, and Croydon in particular give a shout out to, and Cumberland give a shout out to. They've been doing some fantastic work on building integrations between the two platforms so that they work much better together, and we'll continue to do that. So again, that collaboration, I think, just helps us get to problems solved more rapidly. I think addressing reorganization challenges, I think there's going to be a lot of stuff during pre, during, and post reorganization. You heard Kate talk about all of the effort that goes into just getting to vesting day, and you heard all of the effort that's required post vesting day. So I think, you know, having platforms where you can quickly deploy new digital services, integrate with multiple systems, manage your costs, because, you know, I think I've heard Kate say a number of times that, you know, the idea that local government reorganisation is going to save lots of money is potentially a bit of a fallacy. But actually controlling cost is going to be really important. So solutions like ours, where together we can manage the cost and deliver new innovative solutions at a much reduced cost than potentially some alternative solutions, is going to be really important, I think. And it's all about our, you know, the reusable components that sort of LocalGov Drupal have, that we have, and that capability that can be reused across the sector. So we're removing that duplication of efforts. And again, that goes into allowing people who are going to be dealing with lots and lots of plates spinning all at the same time, you know, not having to necessarily think about some things over here where actually we've already done the work together as a number of authorities working with us, Netcall, working with LocalGov Drupal, and sharing those repeated reusable components. And I think the interoperability is really important. We're both open standards, we play nicely, we integrate, and I think that's going to be essential. You know, when you're bringing potentially 8 different, as North Yorkshire have done, for instance, 8 different councils together, you've got all those systems. How on earth are you meant to make sense of that complexity? Well, it's hard enough just designing what the future should look like, but then when you try and execute that, if you don't have the right tools, the right solutions, but really the right organizations helping you along that journey, it's going to be really tough. And then enhanced citizen experience. I don't need to say a lot about this. We know that the people who work with us in Netcall and work with LocalGov Drupal are obsessed with user-centered design and are obsessed with understanding the impact on the end user in a way that probably a lot of your internal colleagues in the council aren't. So I think having a peer group of other people where you can share some of those frustrations potentially, but also share some of the successes is going to be really important. And again, just the scalability of both of our platforms together is going to be really essential as councils merge, restructure digital services. You know, the ability to be able to expand those services post vesting day is going to be really important. And I think, you know, again, I think our solutions and how we work with our council partners through customers is a model. And finally, I think it's just that future ready bit. I think ultimately, LocalGov Drupal and Netcall partnership is really about empowering councils to help modernize their digital services, reduce the complexity, and focus on value and delivering value to citizens. That's not going to happen on day one, as Kate's outlined. You know, vesting day is not the end; it's the start. So, I think having Netcall and LocalGov Drupal and our solutions, I think, gives councils a really good opportunity. I think probably one of the best opportunities to continue to build that future organization post vesting. It's going to be complicated and it's going to be really complex, and those are two different things. And you know, having us in terms of our approach to collaboration and sharing and reuse is, I think, going to be a really essential thing to be able to call on. I don't think councils are always going to get that from other providers and other suppliers. Certainly not my experience when I worked in local government. So I guess I'd summarize that I think our partnership and our solutions provides councils with a really strong opportunity to, navigate local government reorganisation. We're not going to solve the challenge of local government reorganisation, but we can certainly help councils to kind of navigate that a little bit easier. That's me.
Thanks very much, Mark. That's absolutely brilliant. Will, would you like to add anything there, or maybe we can take a couple of quick questions? I appreciate some people might have to drop off, but I imagine people have got questions. So, Will, do you want to add anything, and then we'll take a question?
I think just very briefly to what Mark and Chris and Kate have said, changing culture in LGR is difficult because of all the things that everybody's mentioned here. But there is an opportunity to think more about, what's your in-house capability and what's your delivery model when you go into these new organisations. So in both the councils that have presented today, in Brighton, where I worked back in the day, and Cumbria more recently, what those councils have been able to do is go from, if they want to get something new done, they'd have to necessarily write a business case and do a procurement and hire some new people, because the skills are already there and the tools to provide those things for the most part are already there. In Brighton and Cumbria use Drupal. They both use low code. One is Netcall, one is not. Oh, I'm going to mention the name. You can, Chris, if you want to. But it's about being able to iterate and respond to user need, and put user-centered design at the heart of what you do. And I think your tooling is a big part of that. Does the tooling enable you to do this sort of changing process? So think about that. It's not necessarily buying these things that we mentioned today, but it's thinking about how you want to live in a new world and how do you want to do this work. So I think that's all I wanted to say, really.
Thanks, Will. Does anyone have any questions? Are there any questions? I can't see hands, but if people want to shout, maybe people could shout out if they've got questions. Do we have any questions? No? Any questions in the chat? Let's have a look. There's one from Andrew. What does the web/content model look like in terms of a central team roles or devolved model? Was there a process to transition multiple web teams from each authority into a new unitary service? And I know, Kate, you've answered that below, but could you vocalize that answer for us as well, please?
Yeah, so I think I described how the digital team was hosted by Westmoreland on behalf of both authorities and provided those services. So pre-day one, there was the customer and digital work stream where we worked across all of our resources within both Cumberland and Westmoreland to set up the new websites, and we had a process of deciding what the right technology was for doing that, and then the work to get to day one. Following day one, Craig and his team were hosted in Westmoreland and provided that service back to ourselves. Within Cumberland, we didn't really have any website resource at all, so we didn't have to transition anybody in because it just didn't exist. So when Craig and the team moved into Cumberland, they formed a central website team, and we then got some increased capacity because that ex-county council service was basically split in two. So we got half the resource back to do the work. So we had to add capacity to that. So we've got a central model, which is most of the ex-county team plus some additional capacity to do the work that we need to do. But as I say, we didn't have any capacity within the ex-district areas to do website. It was all part of the people's job. So we've just kind of moved the responsibility into that central team.
Chris, what was your experience of that?
I'm off mute. Yeah, not dissimilar really. We were a county merging with districts and boroughs. So again, I think the engagement was done pretty good early on. What I talked about there around people meeting early and discussing. And I think the other thing that again the team did really well was that kind of cultural piece of making sure again that we set a unified culture together. We didn't try and impose, even though the county council had one of the kind of bigger lumps, if you like, that monoculture. I think one of the things to answer fairly early on, though, but to be fair, it's not so much a problem of LGR as it is every organisation I've ever been in is around content ownership and where that sits. And usually there's a fairly unedifying bum fight between technical teams, comms and PR if you have it, and/or marketing, and people with their own product pages. Again, I'd probably just encourage you to have those questions early on. We ended up in a situation where we owned both, but it didn't start out that way. And again, you probably got some. All I would say is codify those ways of working. I'm not going to say any particular model's better than the other, but you run the risk that if they're done in different places and there's not that sync up, you're going to have some tensions.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Chris. Okay, well, I think we're going to have to end it there because we're almost at the hour. So I'm sure everyone wants to get up and have some lunch. So apologies that it ran over slightly. Thanks so much to Mark, to Chris, to Will, to Kate for running that session. We have just one more LocalGov Drupal Week 2025 session left today, and that's at 4 o'clock. You can sign up for that on Luma. Thanks again to our sponsors, Anatech, Agile Collective, and Big Blue Door. You can feed back on this session in an email that you'll receive very soon. Please do give us the feedback because we're always sort of changing how we're running these events, and we'd love to hear from you. So please do that. So that's it from us for now. One more session this week. Hopefully we'll see you in that. Thank you again, and goodbye.